Really? One. All right, we're going to get started with our second Good Friday service for those who are here, and our first one for online because we had technical issues with the first one, which is happening. So today is a different kind of service than what you would normally attend, in that we don't really have worship. We have a couple of videos that we're going to with music a little bit later. But really, Good Friday for me is, it's my favorite service of all year. I like it better than Easter. I like it better than Christmas Eve, Christmas services if we have them. I love Good Friday because to me, Good Friday is the reflection of why I am a Christian. It's the counting the cost day. It's the reminder of the love that God has for me. And I love to take this day and just simply make it about that. And so traditionally, even in our family, Good Friday is a very somber day. Like we have a meal together, but we don't do a lot of like Easter things. We do that later on kind of thing. And so that's really what the reflection of this service is going to be like. Sorry, I got to get my everything in order here. Oh, I can take it off. That's right. So I do this every time. I preach halfway through and then realize that, no, I can actually take my mask off. Oh, it's caught. It's an accessory. There we go. Thank you, Darren. I appreciate that. So we want to do announcements. We have simple announcements today. You want to put them up there, David? Good gravy. Right now, the hair, like honestly, I hate masks. So Easter Sunday morning, we have two services, 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. There will be worship for that. Enoch and I will be playing and singing. There is still spaces, not very many, but if you are online and you want to come or you haven't registered yet, just send me a quick email and we will get that done. And then just some prayer requests that we have. So we need to pray for those who are looking for jobs, those who are mourning. We've had a few deaths in our church, family members and stuff like that. So just pray for those that have lost family members. I'm thinking specifically of Sam and Sarah lost their grandfather a couple of weeks ago, and Kitty and Wendy lost their grandmother, I think a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. So just pray for them. Pray for those who are ill, those who are getting married. Getting married is stressful and it's hard. On a good day during COVID, it's not so easy. Your CPC leadership, board, and pastors, as situations change, we have to be very fluid, and it's just takes a lot of strength and leadership to do that, and wisdom, and so we're always looking for wisdom for that. And then just the COVID situation, I was saying in the first service, they keep saying, well, we need to seclude and isolate because we need to flatten the curve, and I'm like, that curve came and went years ago. Like we're well into a year and a half now, and it's still happening. So the last pandemic was was when the Pentecost Assemblies of Canada started in 1918, and it lasted for 2 years. So, halfway there. And with the new vaccines and everything too, hopefully that'll be better. So we're just going to get it right into the message, and then we're going to have a time of reflection, so just to explain what's going on. And so I have a video that we're going to have, but during the video, it's not necessarily there for you to watch, but really just to have a moment of quiet time to reflect on what it means, right? What does Good Friday mean, and what it means for your life, and just what God has done, and just a moment to just be reflective on inside, and just to understand and really comprehend about this day. And then after that, we'll do communion, and then there is a hymn that we will sing with the video, and you can sing. I think I was the only one singing in the last service, so that's okay. But if you want, or you can just close your eyes and let it kind of wash over you, which is really good as well. And so when I was thinking about Good Friday, I kept thinking of this phrase, on the night he was betrayed, and that's from Matthew 26, 17 to 30, which is the verses that we're going to be looking at. And on the night he was betrayed. So, and this is what it says, verse 17. On the first day of the festival of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Where do you want us to make preparations for you to eat the Passover?" And he replied, "Go into the city to a certain man and tell him, 'The teacher says, my appointed time is near. I'm going to celebrate the Passover with my disciples at your house.'" So the disciples did as Jesus had directed them and prepared the Passover. And when the evening came, Jesus was reclining at the table with the 12, and while they were eating, he said, "Truly I tell you, one of you will betray me." And they were very sad and began to say to him one after the other, "Surely you don't mean me, Lord." And Jesus replied, "The one who had dipped his hand into the bowl with me will betray me, and the Son of Man will go just as it is written about him. But woe to that man who betrays the Son of Man. It would be better for him if he had not been born." Then Judas, the one who had betrayed him, said, "Surely you don't mean me, Rabbi." And Jesus answered, "You have said so." And while they were eating, Jesus took the bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to his disciples, saying, "Take, eat, this is my body." And then he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you. This is my blood in the covenant for which is poured out for many, for the forgiveness of sins. And I tell you, I will not drink from this fruit of the wine from now on until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." And when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. And so that's really the passage we're going to look at. And now I know that Good Friday, there's more. And it's about what Jesus endured. And that is the crux of what Good Friday is, that he was taken to before Pontius Pilate. They delivered somebody else instead of him. They crucified him. They beat him so that his body was raw. They put crown of thorns on his head so he bled. They struck nails into his hands, and they hung him on a cross where he suffocated. They pierced his side. It was gory, it was bloody, it was violent. They did things to him that they didn't do to any other prisoner. And that is what Good Friday is, but this is where it starts. This is where it starts, on the night he was betrayed. And when we look at this passage, this is why it's called the Last Supper for a reason. There's a reason why it's called the Last Supper, and this is this is where it's going down, right? This is where it is that Jesus, what he'd been preparing for his whole earthly life, and even before he came to earth, the plan, that this was the culmination of this event. The next 24 hours, not even, would be the end of it. Mr. Allred and I had a conversation, and I was saying to somebody about whether I wasn't sure when the exact date of Easter was, right? Because I always think, because I know Christmas we celebrate in December, but he was actually probably born in June or July, around then. But Mr. Allred knew. April 3rd, and 33 AD, right? So we are one day off. So, next year fits at the same time. But it really happens at this time, and so this is the culmination of what Jesus had been preparing for. And there's a plan for the night. It wasn't like Jesus just showed up and knocked at the door and said, "Hey, I'm here. Let's have dinner." The disciples went in and they talked to the chosen one who was going to prepare. So there was a plan, just like everything else that God had orchestrated. There was a plan even for this meal, because there's a reason. It wasn't going to be like any other meal. And this was the last time that he would eat with his family and share these special moments with them. This is the last time he would lounge in their presence and be fully God and fully man and not resurrected, right? Like he was still the same as them in a lot of ways. And when I say that, I mean I recognize that he's both God and both man, so not quite the same. But he wasn't perfected yet, if I can say that. He wasn't resurrected yet. And I think it was just a time of him just to enjoy being with them. because what was about to come was going to be hell on earth. And I think it was just that moment of pleasure, right? That last little moment of pleasure before everything went. And even that was marred. And so Jesus does the time for the big reveal, right? So Jesus could have gone and said nothing his whole dinner, but the point of it was to say, no, someone is going to betray me. He wanted them to know. He wanted them to know. And I think he wanted them to know that it was a part of the plan. You know, I've been thinking about this, and every time you preach differently. You can do the same message, but things will come and change. And I think Jesus wanted Judas to know. And and one of the things that kind of struck me about this is that when they go through, when Jesus says, you know, one of you is going to betray me, and then they all kind of do this, oh, Jesus, is it me? I don't think they did it in front of everybody. I think it was one of those things where everybody kind of went up to him and grabbed his ear and kind of spoke quietly. Because when Judas goes up to him and Jesus says it is so, it's either, I take it as either one of two ways. That the way that Jesus spoke was ambiguous, so that it wasn't quite clear that he was agreeing with Judas, or that it was quietly done, because there's no reaction from the disciples when Judas says it, right? And if somebody was going to betray somebody that I loved more than life itself, there's no way that man or woman is going to stand there, right? Like it's on like Donkey Kong. It's going to happen, and so I think there's a quietness that happens here, and what I find, what strikes me about this passage as well, is that Jesus has this saying, or the Bible says that, you know, better for this man that he wasn't born, right? Like woe to the Son of Man is going to do what he's going to do, and yes, it's going to be awful, but he's going to glory. But the one who's doing the betraying, better he would not have been born. And I think part of that is that moment when the eyes are open and the mind is cleared, because the heart is hard here, but that moment when they realize what they've done and there's no taking it back, right? And for Judas, didn't end well. Like, his life did not end well. And, you know, with them all asking, I wonder what Judas felt like, because he knew he had taken the silver. It was in his pocket. He knew what was going to happen, and yet he still had the audacity to say, Lord, is it me? Hoping, I guess, that Jesus really didn't know, but he knew. And Jesus was very, very aware of what was to come. He was very aware. And after we read this, we now have this beautiful new tradition, right? There's a new tradition that's born, and it comes like this, that the bread is a reminder that Jesus gave himself as a sacrifice for the sins of the world. It's not just bread. It's a reminder of the body and the breaking of the bread, the breaking of the body, the sacrifice that Jesus paid by giving himself, so that we could come into the presence of God boldly and with freedom. What Adam broke in the beginnings of creation is now rectified and made whole. And we take time for communion once a month. I love communion. I will say that I always forget it's communion until I get to church and I see the emblems at the front of the church. And it's good that I know the scripture quite well already. But I love communion. But what I love about Good Friday is that it's all about communion. It's all about the sacrifice and the time that we can take to really consider what we're doing. And then the next part, of course, is the wine and the blood covenant. And so what this reminds me of is Abraham and God's covenant, and I kind of explained this not well in the first service, so it probably won't be well in the second service either, but you can go and take a look at it. And Abraham and God had a covenant between them. God told Abraham that he was going to be the father of nations, that his descendants would be as numerous as stars, as numerous as grains of sand on a beach. And when a covenant was made in the Old Testament, what they would do is they would take an animal, I think it was usually an ox, and they would cut it in half. And they would put the two sides. So the two people who were having the covenant would have a piece of the body on their side. And then what they would do is they would walk, and they would walk around, and they would make an infinity sign, and they would walk in between the pieces, and they would make, and I think it's like 3 times or something, but there's a specific amount of number of time. And they would do this. And so when Abraham and God went to do this covenant, Abraham didn't walk, but God did. Because God wanted Abraham to know that he was the one that was going to make the covenant, that he was the one that was going to keep the covenant. And this bread and wine imagery reminds me of that covenant, because Jesus did it all. We didn't walk anything, right? Jesus is the covenant keeper. He is the covenant. And so that just reminds me how that was. And he did it all so that he saved us from sin, so that we could never say to anyone, I did this. I cleaned myself up. I'm good enough to get into heaven, because the Bible tells us in Romans that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And the wages of sin is death. And the only way to get rid of that wage is to have it paid. And Jesus paid it all. That's a good hymn too, actually, Mr. Allred. Jesus paid it all. Next time. And what I love about this